let's start with you and tell us a little bit about your role at EA.
Sure. So, hey everyone, I'm Andrea Hopelain, and I oversee EA Sports brands, the business and the brands. As you said, brand is a very nebulous term. At EA Sports, it is the end-to-end consumer experience, including partnering with the development teams on what we build, thinking through how we take those to market, and how we commercialize our business through service partnerships. And my portfolio, the portfolio at EA Sports, oversees all of our global football business, our American football business, motorsports, hockey, basketball, baseball, golf, fighting. It's pretty broad. It's pretty exciting. And we're sitting in a really interesting sweet spot at the center of driving fandom into the future. And so I'm pretty excited about some of the conversations we'll have today.
Thank you. Yeah, big weekend for you. Just a big couple of weeks of events here, right? As we think about NHL All-Star to Super Bowl to NBA All-Star, like just a sports mecca is what I would say is going on right now.
So great. It's the month of sports and the Olympics on top of it.
Yes,
so.
We can't forget the Olympics. Well, before we really dive into your work at Electronic Arts and a little bit more there, I would love to talk about the journey to get to your role today. As we were prepping for this, we were talking about, you came from Hasbro and the world of play there. So how has your journey really impacted the way you see play today?
I have been incredibly fortunate to be able to script a career at the intersection of entertainment, of play, of fandom, with brands that make deep emotional connections with their audience, storytelling, characters, world, competition, thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, and play for the last 10 years or so has really been at the epicenter. Spending time at Hasbro working on physical toys and the things that our children play with today, and now into the gaming and interactive play space. It's been really fascinating to be able to work on brands and with consumers that are so deeply passionate about the things that they are interacting with and playing with. And so it's been a really fun journey, and it's unbelievably interesting to track the insights from the youngest consumer of our children and how they interact and how they play and the motivations behind the play that they have, whether it's to create and customize or to fantasize or to compete in play at a young age, and how those translate and they carry with us as we grow, and those motivations don't necessarily change. They just, they take different shape.
We're talking about the company that I work for. It's a research company, right? And so we are focused on fandom and how do you grow fandom. And we work with clients like Hasbro to clients like gaming companies. And it's all around that, how do you grow fandom? How does play really play a role? How does it maybe bring you closer to the game? So as you think about EA and bringing fans closer to, let's say, football through Madden, can you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. We have very, very, very deep partnerships with teams, leagues, clubs, players, athletes, all around across all of our sports. And so much those partnerships have really enabled us to drive deep, authentic simulation play that mimics the real world of sports. And even over the last year, as the world of sports shut down in so many places, EA Sports became sports for so many. And what's really wonderful about what we do today and the way in which our consumers are interacting is we have a multi-generational audience. We've got an audience of very passionate football fans that grew up watching football on the couch with a parent or a loved one. And we also have this awesome next generation of fans that is learning about football by playing Madden. They're learning about what it means to be a wide receiver, or a tight end, or cornerback, or a quarterback. And it's inspiring them to go out and try out for high school football or to go out and play. And so I love how we're really getting both, a multi-generation fan, and we're motivating them in different ways and really, affixing to their love of sports.
That's interesting because as we're sitting here and yesterday we heard from the NFL quite a bit, and we're thinking about what does it mean to be a fan and who is a fan of today, right? And so how, when you think about fans of your individual titles, how do you compare them to like the typical NFL fan, for example? Like, what do they look like? Do they look similar? Do they look very different? Tell me a little bit more about them.
I mean, I think that fans come in all shapes and sizes, and we all have different levels of affinity for sport or different levels of understanding for sport. Because most of our games are very authentic and our deep partnership and proximity with the leagues and the teams and the clubs, that does inspire us to create a more authentic experience. So we have built many modes inside of our games that lend to a more casual or less avid, a fan that has a lower level of IQ around sport. And it's really important for us to continue to do that. And so we really think about that at all levels. I think the other thing that's important is our mission is really to grow the love of sport. And so only super serving that super avid fan is really a disadvantage for us. And so the way we think about it today is by growing the love of sport, it's up to us to think about how we drive play through competition, how we drive connection, how we drive the ability for fans to create, and how we really think about how we fuel participation through watching sport or engaging with sport through these sports in different ways.
When you think about the casual versus avid fan and how you're kind of bringing them into the game, we were talking a little bit about, let's say, how much the player landscape changes, right? So I'm a Tom Brady fan. I will admit that to this room. And so, okay, good. I have some cheers. I don't have food. Oh, I love that. We didn't even talk about this beforehand. So, as you think about updates and think about how you actually push those updates within the game environment to your community, like, is that something that the community is asking for? Like, how real do they want that experience to be?
They want it very real, very real. So we are games as a service now. So our games aren't just purchase it and it is what it is, but we're updating our games throughout the entire season and the off season based on real world sport. And so we're integrating real time data, we're integrating what's happened over the course of the weekend, and through our next gen stats, we're updating players' performance levels inside of our game. We're able to mimic real world games and simulate real world games inside of all of our games. And we're also adapting to real world changes. A great example of that, for those of you in the room who are Formula One fans, we've got a big season coming up. And there's also a big rule change this year inside of Formula One, which is changing the way the cars are built and customized. And so we're working incredibly closely right now with Formula One and with all of the car manufacturers to make sure that we're getting the cars perfectly right, so that what will happen in the real world of Formula One, which is that the cars will have a much better ability to pass and compete on the track without sort of the blur of the tailwinds, if you will. We're going to be able to do that and create much more dynamic head-to-head competition inside of our game as well.
As we're thinking about like other changes that you're making as well, you recently added women's sports to NHL 22, and then women's golf will be in the upcoming PGA Tour game. We're two women talking up here. Like, what does that feel like for you as being a person who's helping to drive that integration of women into the game?
Oh my gosh, so important. So if you think about it, over 50% of the world games today is some level. Whether that's casual, those of you playing Wordle, or it's something much deeper into a deep RPG or simulated experience. So 50% of the world plays games today. And electronic arts, almost 50% of our audience that games is women. And so to pop in a game and not be able to be represented, it's a shame and it's unacceptable in today's day and age. And so we're working incredibly closely to make sure that we can deliver those experiences. A couple of years ago, we put Dr. Danielle into Madden as the first female coach. We just partnered with the IIHF to bring women's hockey 10 women's hockey teams into our NHL product. We partnered with the LPGA on bringing female golfers into our upcoming PGA Tour product. So there's a lot of work we're doing. Representation matters at every level. And it's so important for female players of today and tomorrow and athletes of today and tomorrow to be able to play the stories that they experience in the real world as well.
Turning back to a little bit more, NFL focus. Tell us a little bit about, John Madden and his unfortunate passing, and how he's, an integral part of the EA Sports family. And, what are the plans for that title? Like, is the name going to stay the same? Like, any pivot you're making?
It was such an unfortunate passing of John Madden, and we have been and are truly rocked. He has been such an amazing friend and truly a coach for us too. We partnered with him at the onset of our game, decades ago, and he really inspired us and coached us on how to build the most authentic simulation game. We have a list of 10 commandments from Coach John Madden on the ways in which you do right by the game of football. And so he has been an incredible inspiration to us, and his legacy will live on. We plan to honor him for a very long time inside and around our game. I think one of the most special impacts when we talk about multi-generational fans, one of the most amazing impacts that Coach Madden has had for us is that many of our fans know him as a coach. Many of our players know him as a broadcaster. And many of our players know him as the name behind the most amazing simulation football game. And so it's a pretty special week to honor him, and it'll be awesome to really pay tribute to him over the weekend as we watch the game.
That's great. Just a couple of other questions here. When we were talking a little bit and preparing for this, we were talking about a new world record that you guys recently set. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yes. We've had a lot of big activations on the road to LA, as we called it. As I mentioned, our ability to stay close to the real world of sport and to drive big cultural moments is really important to us. And there was actually 4 big things that we did over the last couple of weeks. One of which was we partnered with Nickelodeon and the NFL and brought the Slime Time game into our Madden experience, into a more casual mode instead of our Madden game, which was really fun to integrate the characters and the slime and all of the fun of that. The second thing we did was we last night hosted our Ultimate Madden Esports Championship. And it was the largest esports event in franchise history. And we had a super, a halftime show which was really fun. On Monday, we released our Super Bowl prediction. Marshawn Lynch read his crystal ball and came out with a prediction for the game, which has the Bengals beating the Rams by 3. And then to your point on the world record, we just set a Guinness Book World Record this past weekend in Las Vegas. So last year, as the real world of sports shut down, there was no Pro Bowl; it was canceled. And so we created the first ever virtual Pro Bowl inside of NFL Madden 21 last year, which was amazing. And so we wanted to reprise that on some level this year. And hosted a virtual Pro Bowl this year in Las Vegas, where we had NFL legends compete. And we broadcast it on the side of a Vegas hotel on the Strip, and it was the largest video game streaming event on a screen. I might be getting the language a little incorrect, but you follow where I'm going. It was the largest we set a Guinness Book World Record, and so it's pretty exciting.
That's really exciting. Were you there live to see it?
I was not there live. I saved my travel luck for this week.
That's good. Well, congratulations. Do you have a favorite team for this weekend?
So it would be really wrong of me to publicly admit that I was going to go against Marshawn Lynch and the EA Sports Super Bowl prediction. However, I did grow up in Los Angeles, and so I've got to give a little bit of love to Rams house.
That's fair. I feel like most people in here are Rams fans, if I'm not mistaken. After yesterday, we saw 2 people raise their hands when we asked who was like a Bengals fan.
It's sacrilegious.
Oh my goodness. And then just a couple of other questions like around, you and when you actually look to engage with these different titles, what's your favorite title to play? Who do you play with? Tell us a little more.
I did not grow up playing video games. So joining the video game industry for me was a little bit, I really had to learn to say. And I will say today that I'm still eternally grateful for our studio development teams who build the opportunity for me to take the assist all the way up to 100%. That said, I've been playing a lot over the last couple of years, and I've had a ton of fun playing Formula One, our new Formula One game with my 5-year-old, who kicks my butt, and also, of course, play all of the other games. I've played FIFA and Madden. I'm really excited about our upcoming PGA Tour game, which is really, the courses look unbelievable for any of you who are golf fans. So, yeah, we've got a lot coming ahead that's really fun to play.
And when you think about like the new releases that you're having and you're thinking about like as a marketer and some of the roles that you come from, like share with us a little bit about how the focus is split between product versus like brand. And you think about electronic arts as a brand or the titles as a brand, just break that down for us.
There's a lot we can unpack in that. What I will say is our team works incredibly close with our studio development teams on a day in and day out basis to find the insights that are driving the innovation that we build inside of our product. And we have spent many decades building up FIFA, Madden, NHL, the games they are today that are iconic to EA Sports. And so we've, and as a result of the high quality products that we've built, EA Sports has gained a really significant halo as a driver of sport and driver of interactive sport. But in coming into this role in the last year, it was pretty noticeable to me that we hadn't spent enough time on our hero brand, on EA Sports as a brand. And so there's a big effort underway right now on how we redefine the meaning of EA Sports that can drive more inclusivity, that can drive us into new places and spaces while still remaining incredibly loyal to our core.
And then, final question before we open it up to the audience. When you think about, your partners with whether or not they be the NFL or when you're thinking about like on the ground partnerships and engagement, like how do you go about that approach? Like what are some of the things that you're talking about as you're coming to the table?
I think the most important for us is always staying close to the consumer and identifying where they are, what's most interesting to them, and collaborating incredibly closely with them on the things that will motivate them and have meaning to them. And so that becomes sort of the root for how we approach any partnership is what value will it bring back to our player? What is the why for them? And so that's really, at its core, what's the why for them?
That makes perfect sense. All right, time for questions.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks so much. And I love this because it's always my favorite topic, the intersection of entertainment and culture. And we got a question right here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm from Cincinnati. We're all very happy to be here. The question I have is now that name, image, and likeness has essentially been approved, how do you see yourself pivoting with college sports?
Yeah, so we have announced and greenlit the return of college football to EA Sports. It's been almost a decade since we've been in that space. And so we are working really closely to make sure that we can do all we can to represent true player name, image, and likeness inside of our game. And so I don't have anything to share quite yet, but know that it's really important to us to build the most authentic game possible.
Are you going to do
Today I can't tell you.
Not because you can't tell us. I don't know for sure.
There's still a lot to be sorted out. We've got a lot of lot of ambition. Getting college right first is first and foremost for us.
Okay, any more audience questions?
How's it going?
Great.
I'm cool. So I'm just kind of curious, with gaming, everything has been talked about how it's becoming more international going forward. Obviously, these games, a lot of them are sports themselves are also becoming more international. So as the fans become more international and one day become developers of these games, how do you see the development of the games changing over time with that?
Our business is highly global right now, actually. You look at just FIFA, for example, almost 65% of our business is done outside of North America. And if you think about the global football fans, we are absolutely delivering for them, with them, and even where they are. It is our largest business by far at Electronic Arts. So we have a pretty strong global mindset. I have a team around the globe. We have studios that are sitting in locations and markets around the globe. And we're partnered with the Premier League and the Bundesliga and all of the right people to make sure that we are doing right by the motivations of our global fans.